Hey everyone, welcome to a Screenwriter's Fix. My name is Tony D, and today we're fixing the Star Trek universe. I've already fixed the Star Wars universe and James Bond and the DC universe. Now we're going to fix Star Trek. Now, much like the comic book universes, there is a way to fix things. And in the Star Trek universe, it's with time travel. Now, time travel has been overused in a lot of different mediums, of course, so you have to use it very sparingly, and you only have to use it when you have to do these sweeping changes, but I think it can be done. Here's what I would propose. And again, I don't think any of the people who own the franchise rights to these characters and various TV shows and movies would ever get together to do this. It's just not worth their time. They wouldn't see it from a creative standpoint as saving the franchise. I would have to be so they would have to see so much money coming out of me that they would allow me to do that, like a J.J. Abrams, that they would allow that. But I don't think that'll ever happen. But if I had the power, this is what I would do. I would actually go back to the point at which I see things went wrong. Now, I think J.J. Abrams' first Star Trek reboot actually had a good script. Thought it was pretty decent for the most part. The premise being, of course, that a character from the current timeline of Star Trek, Next Generation, past that even, or movies, Nemesis, whatever you want to call it, that sort of timeline, played by Eric Bana, comes back in time and F's everything up, right? So I would start with that character. And the premise of the movie or TV show would be that character screwed up a bunch of things in time. And we'd have to create, I would create some new Star Trek characters who their job was to undo the damage in the timeline that character caused. And in the process, we'd have to bring back Eric. I think that would be a reasonable actor to bring back. I think his, he wouldn't command the kind of money that, say, Patrick Stewart or any of these other big actors would command. I think it would be pretty easy to get him. Now, I think the characters that played the current Captain Kirk, or the actors that played the current Captain Kirk, they might be a little tougher. Also, some of the other actors as well. But let's assume we could get them. So the storyline would be about this group of Star Trek characters going back in time to stopping this Romulan from changing history, which he's already done. And that the movies, past a certain point, Discovery, the new Picard series, all that was a result of this changing timeline, not the result of what actually should have happened. So I think this new crew would have something called like and they touched on this, I think, I want to say on the Next Generation, but maybe it was one of the others. But there was a Star Trek episode that touched on this idea that time travel was going to be something the Federation either did or had done in the future. And can't remember the episode, but maybe somebody can enlighten me. Anyhow, the premise would be this would be a new crew that comes back, and their mission is to stop this timeline transfer because they're from the original timeline. And the reason you haven't seen them up until now is, well, they have the technology to have traveled through time, as did this Romulan character. And so, like the Romulan character, they're unaffected by the new timeline, let's say. So they go back and they essentially stop Eric's character from messing up the timeline, and it goes back to the way it was. And in the process, you eliminate all the bad Star Trek stuff that nobody likes. You just eliminate it. Just say it didn't happen. You can bring back William Shatner as Kirk. That would be the big ending. I would bring back Shatner as Kirk for one last time, so he could happily retire. And I would also start a new Star Trek that would take place after The Next Generation. Deep Space Nine would be okay. I guess I'd reluctantly accept Voyager, even though I thought it was a terrible, terrible show. Enterprise would be gone. I never liked Enterprise, thought it was a bad series, didn't think it was canon. I would make that part of the stuff you would wipe out. I would definitely get rid of Discovery and the current Picard series. Everything that was woke and new and stupid, you could wipe it out all in one big swoop, and you could start fresh with a new crew that have already saved the universe. And then the ending would be that not only do they save the universe, but this technology they used is then destroyed by the Federation, because they realize just how dangerous it is, and they don't want anybody time traveling ever again. So they create some sort of, some sort of lock or some sort of time paradox in order, so they cannot use this technology anymore ever again. Maybe they go back in time and eliminate the technology to begin with, something like that, or just to make it, illegal, essentially, so no one goes back in time. Maybe they use some sort of technology to set up some sort of monitoring device in order to anticipate anyone using time travel, and anybody attempting to go back in time is immediately stopped because it's time travel technology. You could do that, right? If you had the ability to time travel, you'd have the ability to create sensors that could detect anybody attempting to time travel, and therefore you could immediately go back in time and stop them before they go anywhere. So that would be the end result, thereby eliminating all future time travel, which you'd need to do, and then start fresh with a new crew and a new sort of setup. And you could go back to the core elements of Star Trek, which was that the Earth is a utopia, the Federation is a utopia, and it started on Earth, and it was, it's when the Earth guys met the Vulcans, and they started this Federation, and it just grew and grew and grew, and everybody's wonderful and nice, and really it's about meeting new civilizations and, out in the stars, and you would have this new crew that would be in that quadrant that was explored in Deep Space Nine, and Voyager. So they would be way out there, where the Dominion is, those guys, and you could explore these strange new worlds and seek out new life and blah, blah, blah. And you could go back to the classic sort of Trek kind of stories. And I would also bring in, as Roddenberry did, big name science fiction guys. There's not too many of them these days, but there are a few. A guy like Neil Gaiman I'd certainly bring in. He's a great writer. Bring them in to write episodes, promote it that way, and really go back to its roots as more of a hard science fiction show, for television anyway. And, these days, since television is mostly on places like Netflix and Hulu or CBS Access, you could afford to then be very geeky about the episodes because it's not on regular TV. And that was really the appeal for a lot of years, that it was very intelligent. Some of the guys I would bring in to write these episodes, I would bring in the Futurama guys. A lot of the Futurama guys were very intelligent guys, and they wrote some great episodes of Futurama. I would bring those guys in. They definitely know their geek stuff. And, I would build it around a crew that, again, was really exploring new worlds and new life, and really go down that road of wow, this is a mind-blowing, alien race that, has this weird trait or thing that it can do. Um, I would also expand the Star Trek universe. I've always wanted to do a comedy version of Star Trek. And so I'd do a separate series with that and do like a more fun one about a group of characters who were in the sort of regular Federation space, just trying to get by kind of thing. I think that would be a fun series, especially since there's so many different Star Trek series. Now, when I say a comedy series, I wouldn't like spoof Star Trek. I wouldn't want to like denigrate what was happened. I would just make it a fun group of characters within that universe. So like the stakes wouldn't be high. I'd make the stakes very, very low. And that would be fun to do. And you could explore some of the more, nuanced things about the Federation and how it works and how people live. These guys could be a little bit sketchy, which would be fun too, and how the Federation kind of deals with that. And ultimately they would be good characters, but I think that would be fun as well. And hopefully we could get away from all this woke nonsense that Star Trek never was about. Just never was about. I mean, the clips I've seen from that Picard show are just jaw-droppingly bad. I mean, characters cursing a blue streak. What is that? What is that? That was never a part of Star Trek. In fact, that was addressed in one of the movies, as one of the YouTubers point out. I think it was Yellow Flash or one of the guys. Cursing was never a part of Star Trek. That was a 20th century thing that went out of vogue hundreds of years ago. You have to really, part of Star Trek and part of any future show is projecting what you think the future might be. And that's always a fun thing for audiences to see. This is what I think the future is going to be, everyone. This is what I think the technology might be. Let's try that again, because then you could explore new worlds within the worlds you already sort of know. And that can be a fun, creative exercise for people who write these stories. I know I enjoy doing it. I would love to see what, living life in that century is like. They tried it in the 60s and you got mini skirts and, things with knobs on it. And then they moved up to the 90s, and Next Generation had onesies and and various touch screen things with no knobs. And, I look forward to seeing what the next thing is. I don't want to be preached to about, race and religion and gender and all that BS. So make Star Trek again, I say. But of course, nobody listens to me.